we as an industry will have to keep ourselves in check.
But I think the pandemic created some issues in our hiring process.
The staffing firms like Tier 4, I mean, you and I have had many conversations, the staffing firms who can articulate that are the ones who will survive.
Welcome to the Next Tier podcast. The Next Tier is a leadership podcast about the people decisions that shape organizations and the moments that define careers. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing my good friend, Ray Culver. Ray, you and I have known each other almost 2 years through our association with TALiNT Partners, which I am privileged to be a founding U.S. member. For the listeners meeting you for the first time, what should they know about Ray Culver beyond the titles?
Well, thank you for having me. This is great.
Absolutely.
I think they should know about me that the industry has been my career. Like, this is all I've ever done. I started 30 plus years ago here in Atlanta with Randstad. And it's just taken off from there. As far as personally, I live in Southern California. I have a husband. I have a dog. Love Tex-Mex food. Went to University of Georgia.
Go Dogs.
Go Dogs. Stick up. Wolf, wolf. I think that's a high level. That's me.
Yeah. 30 years ago, Randstad, North America. And you were there for a while.
I was there twice.
Twice.
Yeah.
So you boomerang.
2 tours of duty.
What do you think shaped your path into workforce solutions?
I think it was my mom.
Okay.
Yeah, because she was with Randstad. And she was in a senior leadership role. And when I left university, her leader was like, "What are you going to do?" And I'm like, "I have no idea."
Yeah.
Like, you get out of school, you're like, "I don't know what I'm going to do."
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Would you consider, starting a career with Randstad?" And sure, cool.
Yeah.
And it just stuck 30 years later.
What kind of degree did you get at UGA?
Human resource.
Human resource. So HR degree. So, I mean, adjacent.
Perfect. Really good degree, but still you're coming out, you're like, "I have no idea."
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a really good entry point. It was when Randstad had bought their very first company in the U.S.
Okay.
So very European model, bringing it into the U.S. It was a fun time to be with Randstad. Not saying today's not, but it was just a very different company back then.
So outside of your mom influencing you into the industry, is there anyone else that is top of mind that really influenced you early on and set kind of your path?
I think from an industry perspective, I've always been very fortunate to have incredible leadership. And most of them have been female. And they've just been incredible at helping me to understand my strengths, my weaknesses, overcome my weaknesses, and to really push me. And so, I think my mother started that because she knew the industry. She knew where I had been. And then the leadership just kind of helped to push me forward.
Yeah. Do you think that you've gravitated towards women leaders then in your career as a whole when you look at kind of your path that you've gone down? To say that, I think most of the time we interview leaders and it's generally a lot of men that come up as early influencers.
Now that you say that, I don't know that I chose that path, but it does seem like most of my leadership were women.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Incredible women in the industry who had done amazing things in their own right, like truly incredible leaders. I would say towards the end of my career, and I say that end of my career in corporate, was more of that male influence. So with Manpower Group, you had Kip Wright, you had other leaders. I reported it into their organizations, and so that's where more of that came into play.
Okay. What were you like as a kid?
My sister used to beat me up.
That's what they're for, right? Older sisters?
I think, I was much more of, as a kid, maybe a dreamer.
Okay.
Maybe that's a good word for it.
Yeah.
Because back in the day, I wanted to be an architect.
Okay.
So my mother set me up with like the architect desk and all the things that you needed for it. And so I would just get lost in creating, subdivision and floor plans and things like that. So it was more of a dreamer to kind of do different.
Well, and I think you can draw a parallel to the dreamer aspect with curiosity. We think about staffing and talent acquisition, and curiosity is a big driving force in what we do.
Yeah. And I think throughout my career, and anyone who knows me on a personal level or from a leadership perspective, be curious is something that everybody should. Like, you should never stop being curious. And I think if you get to that point where it's like, you know what, I just really don't feel like there's much more to learn, dude. Yeah. Like, you should look for something else.
Yeah, we got to constantly be learning. That's career now, whether it is white collar, blue collar, trade skill, we've got to constantly be learning. I want to talk a little bit about your journey. And we've talked about, building this career that spans a leadership through Scout Exchange. We talked about Randstad North America, Manpower Group North America. These are pretty humongous names in our industry. And you help develop and lead national and global managed services programs and sales channels. And when we talk about that, like, I think it can't be underestimated the global size of that workforce management and those programs, those solutions that you were leading. But over the last 8 years, you've shifted a little bit to where you're helping staffing firms and HR tech platforms go to market with sales strategies. And I'm really curious, like, what led you down that path from leading these very large global teams to now working very closely with emerging tech and HR and staffing?
I definitely enjoyed my time in corporate. Don't want to go back to corporate. Not saying that if you got to do what you got to do, but that's definitely when I left Manpower Group, because Manpower was such a large global organization. And when I left there, it was really kind of a point where it's like, okay, do I want to go back into that corporate machine or do I want to try and do something different? And I kind of made the pivot, went to Scout Exchange. That was more of a tech, HR tech, and a smaller HR tech. It was owned by a very large company, but it was still an emerging recruitment technology. And then when COVID happened, when everything kind of locked down in 2020, Scout Exchange, a lot of the funding and stuff went away. So at that point, you're at another crossroads of it's like, what do I do now? We've got a pandemic. You're stuck at home, don't have a job, not really that concerned about that. You can fix that. But what do you want to do? Do you want to go back into HR tech? Do you want to try and go back to a corporate entity, or do you want to start your own thing? And I was very fortunate that I had some people who had really believed in me throughout my career who said, if you start your own thing, we will, we have business for you. So if you're willing to go out and do that, we've got you.
Yeah.
So I had 2 clients come out of the gate because they believed in me. They said, you know what, take the jump. It's a perfect time. And we will be first clients. And it worked.
Bet on yourself. But the clients' contacts were a driving force behind that. And I have to wonder, I have a kind of a similar story with my platform, but I'm curious, do you think if the pandemic happened, would you have bet on yourself?
Probably not. I think if the pandemic, well, at least not
at that point in time. It forced you to.
It did.
Yeah.
Because you find yourself, again, you don't have a job. You're living in Palm Springs, so you're in the desert.
Yeah.
No, it's not
you're not driving to LA.
No, absolutely not. It forced you into doing that. Had the pandemic not happened and Scout Exchange had kept going and growing, I was actually positioned to open up Scout Exchange UK. So the wheels were in motion. We'd already sold our house in Palm Springs. We were already finding a place in London.
I didn't know this.
Yeah. So, the wheels were completely in motion.
Wow.
And again, when everything happened for a reason, but that kind of put a squash on everything.
Yeah.
So again, my husband, we're like, okay, we're in Palm Springs, sold the house, like it's under contract, can't get out of that. What do we do now? It's like one of those heck moments. I won't curse.
Yeah.
One of those heck moments where you're like, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
And so that's when, again, it just kind of made it more clear. Like everything started kind of coming into clarity as far as this is doing.
Yeah.
And I haven't looked.
Yeah. And I've met your partner and I know him and I know he brings a level of stability to your relationship.
He'll appreciate you saying that.
But I think that allows you to go bet on yourself. I look at like my wife and how her being in children's healthcare allowed me to bet on myself and how that created and opened more opportunities for me in the future. And I think without those people behind us, those relationships, those loved ones, really, we wouldn't be in the seats that we are. There are times where we don't know that as we're living it. It feels very heavy. But when you come out on the other side of it, you're like, that was the right decision at the right time in the right moment. And I'm so grateful for it. And I know you are too, because now you're jet setting and really driving innovation in our industry. And I think to me, that comes back to when you started in workforce solutions, before job boards were a thing, before smartphones and before AI, which really exploded out of the pandemic. Yeah. What do you think has changed the most in the industry right now?
I think, that touched on some of it building up to it, but I think technology is what has totally changed the industry.
Yeah.
You cannot have a conversation with anybody without tech, AI, things like that coming up.
Yep.
I think that's changed the industry. I think the way people want to work has changed the industry. The pandemic might have opened up the door to remote and hybrid working, but it's just kept going, kept growing.
Yeah.
You see companies who have said you have to be back in office, you have to do this, you have to do that. But you see just as many companies who are now using hybrid work and remote as a benefit. So that's interesting. I also think the industry's changed so much because of the way talent is choosing to work. So they don't necessarily want to be full-time. They want to be contingent. They want to be a freelancer. They want to be fractional. They want to be all these things. So when I've had this conversation with several folks lately, if you want to tap into that talent and you're not open-minded to how you're going to do that, then you should just come to terms with you're not going to get that talent. So it's like,
or a lesser, you're going to access a lesser than talent.
Yeah. So it's like, I mean, I think that's changed the industry incredibly, just the way that people want to work. And it's forced the buyer to either understand the different ways of working or they just won't get the talent.
Well, and I think the key that you said is the consultative approach. It has to be communicated that here is how you access the best available talent. But I think the pandemic created some issues in our hiring process. And primarily, we went to this remote first hiring process, like immediately, right? March 2020, April 2020, all of a sudden, everything was remote first. And what started to happen is, I think then an arms race happened when we came in the emergence of 21 into 22. And there was almost this overhiring because everyone was remote. And then we saw the beginning of the layoffs, some of the contraction that's happened. Now I think hybrid, this 2 to 3 days a week, major metros, is the new norm. Ray, you've had a rare vantage point in the industry. You've sat in hiring manager seats. Now you're leading collaboration across recruitment technology, talent acquisition, and workforce management solutions. I think this journey gives you a perspective that most executives simply don't have. So when you think about hiring talent, how has your philosophy evolved from the early days of screening resumes to now helping organizations set their strategic direction?
I think it goes back to what we just talked about, really helping organizations to understand that there are so many different ways out there of hiring talent and acquiring talent. And it doesn't have to sit in your backyard. It doesn't have to sit in the same country as you. You could be across the world. There are
global.
Right. There are ways to do that. And it's happening every day. It has changed so much, though. You know, from like back in the day when you would walk in on Monday morning and there would be fax paper all over the floor.
Yeah. Rolled up in a...
But today, you know, I mean, it's marketplaces, it's 24/7, it's bots, it's agents talking to talent, things like that. So it's just a whole different world when it comes to hiring and finding talent.
Do you think it's for the better?
I think it's for the better as long as we, as an industry, keep ourselves in check. Because I've said this many times in many forums, we as an industry will have to keep ourselves in check because you've seen margins compress so much. That you see leaders having to combat that to say, okay, how can I offset some of this margin compression? Well, one way is to, let's say, I'm not saying I want to do this, but you know, you bring in an agent, but perhaps you don't bring in any headcount. Okay, how far can you really go with that? Because recruiting is a human industry. I think that's where we're going to have to really police ourselves and make sure that we don't go too far. Because if we do go too far, then there's going to be a course correction period. And it's just, we're doing too much as an industry. Like, I mean, just stay on the track. Don't go overboard.
It's easier said than done.
Oh, yeah.
Because I've been guilty of chasing the shiny object, throwing the proverbial hand grenade in the middle of the room and running. But what we realize is that the more that you can sequence your integrations, your implementations, your innovation, start with the most important use case, prioritize that, close that gap, and then iterate on the next. We've done it all at once. It's painful. I think to your point, the evolution continues to happen. The recruitment now is global. Access to talent is global. But how that moves and what it looks like in the future, I think is going to be a really interesting element for staffing firms specifically. The good news is we're seeing a lot of demand here domestically. So I think you're seeing investments in technology and innovation here. But to your point, we really prioritize balance. We want to lead and innovate with tech, but we also want to back that up with our talent, our people. They're what matter. They have an ability to build relationships through trust, rapport, commonality. They have an ability to have influence and show emotion. And I think agentic solutions, cognitive solutions aren't quite there yet. They will be.
They're getting there.
But they're not there yet. So,
but it takes, I think, a special leader to be able to say what you just said. There's a place for technology, a place for the human.
Yeah.
And like figuring out what is the perfect intersection of those two. Nobody has that answer yet, but it's leaders like what you just said who are saying, hey, we need both, but how do we find that intersection? And you're not just looking for, how do I save money?
Right.
You know, to me, that's the future of this industry are leaders who are saying it's not just about saving money. We've got to figure out how to do it.
Well, and if I look at a leading indicator too, it's not just staffing firms that are trying to figure this out. Internal organizations, enterprise organizations are trying to figure out that same balance with their technology investments and their human capital investments. We've seen the trend across organizations, not just in staffing. If you were to go back and think about your most challenging role that you've held, what would it be and why?
I think it was probably the most challenging. It was probably one of the most pivotal roles. When I first started with Spherion, they brought me in to build or to figure out what it meant to build an MSP channel.
Okay.
So if you look back, Spherion SFN Group was really one of the first ones to bring in someone, and I had never done this before. I mean, it certainly wasn't anything I'd done, but they took a chance on me, brought me in to say, hey, we know we have hundreds of MSP programs we know that we supply to. We know we have millions of dollars, but we don't know what we don't know. And it's kind of the wild, wild west. A branch manager can sign an MSP agreement, but at that point, what are the national implications? What do we really have in this agreement? So they wanted someone to come in and build that out. That was, again, the most pivotal because that set my career, because that has been my specialty, and one of the hardest because I had no idea what I was doing. So again, the leadership at the time, Deb Dean, Bill Grubbs, they took a chance and it paid off, I think, for both of us.
Yeah.
But that also goes back to what I talked about, those strong female leaders. Deb Dean took a chance. He's like, you know what? You're not the most qualified. You know what I mean? Like there are probably people out there who have done things like this more, but I see that you do this and you want to do this, and she took the chance.
And you both succeeded and benefited for that.
It's been fun.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
What signals do you look for as we look at kind of the evolution of resumes and matching talent to opportunities? We were talking about global talent and access to it, serving as a consultative advisor. But are there certain signals that you're looking for that maybe we don't capture from job descriptions or from resumes?
I think some of it goes back to you mentioned the word curious earlier in our conversation. You know, when you're talking to talent and you're talking to someone coming into an organization looking for, this seems to be a hot topic these days, a lot of the soft skills and a lot of the going beyond just the job description, the hard skills, but the soft skills, the curiosity, the ability to embrace change, the ability.
AQ.
Yeah, 100%.
EQ.
Yeah. And you're seeing more and more companies, I think, consider that. And you're seeing more and more assessment companies able to assess for that. But it's just, to me, that's the kind of the next frontier, is get beyond the job description, get beyond the hard skills, figure out what are the soft skills that are going to make this role successful and the talent coming in.
So I would say that's almost like an unconventional talent pipeline then, if we're measuring and evaluating soft skills, kind of going back to your Spherion opportunity. That was more likely an unconventional talent, like haven't done this before, but we know you're the right person for it. Do you think that you're more willing to bet on someone who doesn't fit the traditional mold, or is maybe a little bit more of an unconventional type?
I think there's two ways to answer that question. One is it depends on the role. I mean, if you have a role where you truly need some type of specialization and you need someone who's done something before because you just have to have that, that's one aspect of that. If you have the opportunity to take a bet on different talent, I would go that route in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, and people told me this as I was growing up in the industry. The problem with a salesperson is you can great at sales, but you bring the baggage that you bring everything with you that you kind of learned in the past. So you bring the good, you bring the bad from different companies.
The baggage.
Yes. So if I could bet on someone who doesn't have that baggage and I can teach them, you know, what they need to know and teach them the way of the company all day long.
But I think where it gets very specific is it's not just an age thing there. It's just an experience. You could be out of a completely different industry, but if you have the right skills or the right curiosity, the right attitude, I think that's where that unconventional comes in. I've heard a lot in our industry that former teachers are generally really good recruiters. Why?
I wonder if it's because within their job, they're taught to care and nurture and want to, help the students grow into their best person that they
best
can
self,
be.
yeah.
That should be the same. If you think back to what recruiting's all about, you're wanting to, I'll tell you, going back to Ron 30 plus years ago, one thing that they taught us in training was that at the end of the day, you are changing people's lives. And to me, that's at the heart of recruiting.
It is.
And it seems like these days, a lot of what we hear, we've gotten away from that. And it's like
transactional.
Maybe we need to go back to that to say, you know what, you make it possible for a candidate to pay their house payment. You make it possible for talent to put food on the table for kids. That's what it's about. I mean, that's what recruiting at its core is about.
Well, and there's a lot of conversation right now about our staffing firms dying. And I don't believe that for 1 second, because I think firms like ours that have an ability to build relationships with candidates, but also on our client side, that really we build partnerships. And when we do that, it's an extension. And you still need access to talent. And if you don't have mature internal teams, you're not going to get that access to talent without help. And I think firms that are going to survive in kind of this redesign of what staffing looks like are going to be ones that blend technology and people, but also are very strategic in who they serve and how they serve. I think the transactional model, when we look at it, even though it was intended to quantity, and cost savings, I think now the benefit of that has some diminishing return. And I think that's the one thing people really aren't talking about as much, as the volume game is over. It is.
Definitely, I agree to an extent. I think that the volume game, you still find it in certain channels and sectors.
Yep.
I mean, thinking back to where I come from as far as the channel,
right?
It is a lot about volume. I mean, it's a lot about, how quickly can you get talent. So I think what you're talking about is definitely the future of staffing, because it is much more true relationship, true partner. So I'm not just your staffing firm. I'm not just your transaction. I am truly a partner. Like, you want to bring me in to understand the market, what's happening in the market, the different technologies that are out there, how we're doing it differently. The staffing firms like Tier 4, I mean, you and I have had many conversations. The staffing firms who can articulate that are the ones who will survive.
Yeah.
I do think over the next 3 to 5 years, you will see a lot of firms who either are no longer or who get gobbled up by a company. I think now is a very interesting time from an M&A perspective, because there are a lot of small firms who are looking for that shelter in the storm because they don't have the financial ability to keep going. Access to money is a little bit tighter these days because of interest rates. So you're going to see a lot of M&A activity happening, or you're going to see them just not being.
Yeah, interest rates, you mentioned rate compression, extended payment terms. Those are all impacting the smaller players that generally have, 5 to 10 accounts that they support. And it's a great business, a great lifestyle. But unfortunately, it's a squeeze that is happening. I wanted to talk a little bit about talent partners. This wasn't on our agenda, but I do think we should hit on talent partners, because it's something that's very important to me. It's a community that I've found, and peers, and really, honestly, made some really great friends through it. Shout out to Jesse and my boy Gary. Appreciate you too. But how did you get involved in talent partners?
So probably 4.5 years ago, Ken, who you've met, Ken Brotherston, the founder, he was looking to really come into the U.S. So talent partners, UK-based, very established in the UK. And he really saw the U.S. market as where talent partners needs to go next. I was introduced to him, and we just started talking. I remember the very first, I think it was a dinner that we did over here. And from that one dinner, look at what's happened in the last 4.5 years, to growing into communities, to growing from, and it's not just an events company, but the events definitely push a lot of the insights.
They do.
So growing from one dinner to, I think last year we finished at about 41.
In the U.S.
Yeah. 140 globally.
And it's both talent acquisition, so in-house, and then staffing firms like ours. Yeah. Two separate sort of paths.
And when we look at the talent ecosystem, we really break it down into 4 communities. So true in-house TA, HR, contingent workforce, in-house. Second is staffing and recruiting. The third is talent tech. And then the fourth is talent solutions.
Okay.
Which would be MSP RPO.
Okay.
So those are the 4 communities that we build globally, and that we feel like all of them are very intertwined. Yeah, it's been exciting to get to use the 30 years of what I've seen, what I've learned, what I've done, and my network, most importantly, to be able to bring talent partners to the U.S. And now, as of last year, we've really started hard launching in APAC. So I've been spending more and more time in the APAC region. We really want to take the success that we've seen here and now start to push it across.
Build it there.
We've been in ANZ for a couple of years, but really hyper jump it. Okay, how can we focus on Australia? How can we focus on Singapore? What are the other emerging markets in the APAC region that we should be building the community?
So expanding that global presence then started in the UK, now in the US. And so in-house TA, staffing and recruiting, recruitment technology, and then workforce solutions, RPO.
Those are the four.
And that's TALiNT, TALINT.
Yes,
Partners.com. There it is. So as an advisor in recruitment technology, you help with growth, reliability, people, clients, and risk. Can you walk us through how you've helped navigate the increasing complexity in business technology and client expectations and how that's evolved over time, last few years?
I think a lot of it is working with clients or partners to have them understand what it is what are you trying to solve for? And I know conversation with a tech solution provider who's like, well, we're kind of starting to pull away from what are they trying to solve for and just giving them kind of a sandbox to where they think they could be solving for A, but go in and play in the sandbox, and all of a sudden you solve for A, B, and C.
Yeah.
Cool. But at the same time, if you're in a big company, you at least need to have an idea, in my opinion, of what it is you're trying to solve for. I mean, like, if you don't, where are you going to start? Because it's a big ocean out there.
Defined use case.
Right. But so understand what it is you're trying to solve for, or at least have some type of an idea. Align yourself with solutions who are open to working with you.
Mm-hmm.
Partners and like doing small pilots.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't have to sign a 3-year contract. And then all of a sudden, 6 months in, you're like, okay, this does not do anything that I thought it would. A true solution partner will say, let's do some small pilots. And we're willing to do that with you because we know that our solution will be successful. And then you'll sign that 3-year contract or whatever. So looking for partners who are truly open to partnering with you. And just you mentioned shiny things earlier. Don't get thrown off track by all the shiny things in the market.
Yeah.
Because there are some really incredible solutions, at least on the surface, and there are some really good salespeople. I mean, there are salespeople who could sell anything to anybody.
Right.
Be very careful with that.
Yeah. Is it a product or is it a solution, a true 100%. Solution? And our marketing manager, John Palumbo, and I we have a series called Tech Talks that we have on our YouTube channel. And we talked about AI pilots, and only 27% of AI pilots actually make it into implementation phase. It's an extremely low number. I thought it would be higher, but to your point, it's like, well, we want to solve for this, so we're going to try this pilot, and then that doesn't solve the problem, and then we move on. And it's kind of a repetition that's happening right now, where the use case isn't clearly defined. They just want to try this technology.
And hopefully that 27% will continue to increase. You know what I mean?
That would be the goal, I would imagine.
Tech solutions continue to, I think, embrace and lean into the whole pilot philosophy. And as the market gets smarter and as the market gets more educated on different AI aspects and things, hopefully that will also create that increase because it's just going to get easier to put together a pilot that, again, has a larger percentage of success because you know what you're trying to solve for.
Well, and I talked about sequencing implementations earlier. The ease of that adoption or utilization is also critical in creating return, saving time or investments, right? Thanks for tuning into this episode of The Next Tier. Be sure to check out part 2 as we continue the conversation with Ray, discussing how to leverage contingent recruitment, talent strategies for leaner organizations, and the importance of relationships in leadership. We'll see you next time.